Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Eric. Wonderful spring day. Happy spring.
Yeah, well, it looks like we're finally turning the corner. We've got some great weather. We've turned the clocks back and moving forward.
Actually, we jumped ahead. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's only 1 o'clock for this podcast.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still recovering from lack of sleep.
Yeah. Well, this week our guest is Al Marino from Connecticut Foodshare. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, Al appeared on our sister podcast, Carnivore Radio, talking about the problems that were going on with food insecurity. He's going to give us a bit of an update and talk about all the changes that the organization's gone through in that time. So welcome, Al.
Good afternoon, Eric, Chip. Thank you for having me here. It's great to be back with you guys.
It is so good to have you.
Thank you.
Now, of course, I just introduced you as being from Connecticut Foodshare. That's a relatively new designation. Why don't you tell us what went on with the organizations?
Absolutely, Eric. So, believe it or not, this is now the 40th year that we are in business, and really that most food banks are in business in the United States. I came over from Foodshare, and a little over a year ago, our two boards, Foodshare and Connecticut Food Bank, which was our sister food bank down in Wallingford, began having conversations about the potential of merging. And that all those conversations happened right through the pandemic. And at the end of 2020, they decided to really kind of push things forward. And they came to an agreement the beginning of 2021. I believe February 1st of 2021 was our first day as a new entity. And so we combined both operations, and we are now one food bank in the Feeding America network for the state of Connecticut. We rebranded, and in the process of rebranding our name as Connecticut Foodshare to both highlight and respect the legacy of both prior food banks and indicate to all that are out there that we are certainly the food bank for all of the state of Connecticut and all of its food insecure residents.
And for those of our listeners who may not be familiar with it, Feeding America is a larger organization that connects food banks all over the country, correct?
That is correct, Eric. It's one of the many networks, well, not many, but I would say a few networks that are out there. They began, as I said, back in the early 80s. At one point in time, it was known as the Second Harvest Food Bank Network. And they came across and they rebranded several years back as Feeding America. And right now there's about 200 food banks throughout the network. So anywhere in the United States, north, south, east, west, if someone is hungry, they're going to be able to find food somehow, some way. And the food bank is exactly that. It's an active food distribution warehouse that we in turn provide food to many of our partner programs. Right now in the state of Connecticut, we have about 700 of those partner programs, and they consist of everything from food pantries to community kitchens to homeless shelters to transitional housing, anyone that needs food. And right now we have about 700 programs throughout the state. So it's quite a task to be able to get food to everyone on a regular basis.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, Connecticut, first of all, is not that big a state. And it's also considered one of the richest states in the country. And yet there's still a need for 700 different partner programs to get food to people.
Absolutely, Eric. And that's a wonderful point to dwell upon just a bit here. The fact that Connecticut is considered one of the richest states, but we have, as Jason Jakubowski, our CEO, he says, we have like 169 fiefdoms, 169 towns. Everyone does something a little bit differently. But unfortunately, hunger exists in almost every one of the towns in the state of Connecticut. Right now, in our state, believe it or not, there are approximately 428,000 residents that are food insecure. That amounts to about 1 out of 8 residents. And sadly, there of that number, there's about 110,000 children, or 1 in 7, that are struggling with food insecurity. And food insecurity is really defined as anyone who struggles or worries about where their next meal is coming from. And there's many people that are still in below the poverty line, many people that are underemployed, and they struggle to get food and feed their families. And this was really, really brought to life during the pandemic. That, as many people know that are listening today, that was a very, very challenging situation. And it's still very challenging. Just because we're coming out of the pandemic does not mean that we are done with food insecurity by any means. The problem still exists, but we're trying to make things better for a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
Now, speaking of the pandemic, I mean, you stepped up at Foodshare so much right from day one. I know you had the people there. I know you had a great team of volunteers. You opened up the parking lot at Pratt Whitney every day, served. I mean, how many meals did you serve there? For how long was that open, day after day after day? I mean, it was just an amazing.
Thank you, Chip. We appreciate that. It was really an amazing undertaking. I tell people all the time, and a lot of people, I think, at the time when the pandemic kind of came about, people knew about food insecurity, but they really didn't understand food insecurity. And they maybe heard about Feeding America and maybe heard about Foodshare or Connecticut Food Bank, but did they really understand the work that we did? Once the pandemic hit, they began to understand in a big way. Every night on the network news, people saw lines and lines of cars all over America at various sports venues, football stadiums, baseball stadiums lining up. We were not any different from any of those. As you mentioned, we were over at Rentschler Field, Pratt Whitney Stadium in East Hartford. We decided we had to do something. So we connected with Governor Lamont. He said, use the stadium. And we went over there, and in 54 weeks, we gave away 9.5 million pounds of food. We saw approximately 275,000 cars, and it was like about 2,000 families a day. When I say a day, it was open from 8:30 in the morning till 12:30 in the afternoon, which was incredible. And, we were there when, starting in the spring in April. So we were there when it was still cold and rainy. We sat there. Could you say that again? We sat there through. Sorry about that. It was my Apple Watch. we sat there and we went through all of the summer months. We went through the fall, back through the winter, and we just stayed and stayed and stayed. And it was very, very emotional work. I mean, people were there coming from all over the state at that point in time. We had not merged as of yet, bear in mind, but people were coming from all over the state. And it was really emotional. Cars coming through. Some people would just get their food and speed away, heads down, speed away. Other people would wave, they would cry. And the most challenging thing was to observe was watching the little children in the cars, because they didn't understand what mom and dad were going through, or why they were there, or why they were getting food from someone. And sure enough, we just got through it all, and we couldn't have done it without all of our volunteers. The volunteers were amazing people. We had 30 volunteers a day, and many of them were there almost every day for the 54 weeks. So it was incredible. It really was.
Yeah, I know a lot of the people who were coming to get food from Foodshare. These were folks that never imagined they would be in this situation. And it was very emotional for them, one, being able to get the help, but two, having to accept the help. It highlighted a situation that's actually been going on for a long time. Prior to the pandemic, United Way did what they called their ALICE study. And this was working people that were still not making enough to make ends meet. And this just brought all of that out into the public eye.
Absolutely, Eric. And it was, the Alice saying asset limited, income constrained, and employed. And I think the number is somewhere in the mid 40s thousands at that point. Maybe a family of four making about $46,000 a year. They were considered Alice. And so all of a sudden here, things were rolling along. Stock market was kind of doing well. Things were happening. Bonuses were given out to corporate employees all over America. And all of a sudden, the world stopped in mid-March of 2020 when the pandemic came. And we did some surveys at the site at Rentschler Field. And we found, believe it or not, that approximately 70% of the people that were going through those lines for the very first time had never, ever been to any service of Foodshare or any food pantry ever before. 70%. So there were people there that in line that maybe were making six-figure jobs a week or two prior to the pandemic hitting, that their jobs went away. And all of a sudden it was a whole different world. Maybe a spouse was home, maybe a spouse was sick. There were kids all over the place, and people needed to be fed. The kids were out of school, so they weren't getting meals in school. So this was another challenging aspect of it. So it was, people really stepped up. So we found ourselves purchasing a lot of food. Remember, as a food bank, the vast majority of the food that we receive comes from donations from the big retailers. People like Stop and Shop and Big Y and ShopRite and Walmart and Target and anyone that you could imagine. We buy a lot of fresh produce, but all of a sudden the supply chain was kind of empty. There wasn't anything to be had. So we had to purchase food from all different sources all over America. So it became really challenging. But I will tell you this, that the people in the state, and particularly here in our backyard in Greater Hartford, stepped up in a big way, and the donations came in and we were able to buy what we needed and take care of the people that we had to help. We also received help from the state, the Department of Agriculture. They came in with the different items for us as well. We have the Farms to Families program. So we have boxes of food, we have bread that we were giving away, meat, all types of things. So we took care of people in a big, big way. And to this day, people have really remembered that, and they continue to support and help us. We're very grateful for that.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of nonprofits who rely on fundraising events had to pivot, and you have a couple of events that you did right away. I mean, I know that you have a walk every year. I know that you do your turkey drive every year. So tell us a little bit how you pivoted as far as that raising money and how that went.
Absolutely. So it was those things became a little challenging for us, Chip. First of all, we normally have our walk every May. And obviously in 2020, that couldn't happen. We did a virtual walk in September, which is Hunger Action Month, just to continue to have our name and our words out there. We weren't, in 2020, we weren't able to do any turkey drives. So we had to purchase turkeys and put them out there to people. 2021 came, same thing happened all over again. We couldn't plan a walk for May. So we did a live event at Dunkin' Donuts Park, the home of the Yard Goats, in September. We really couldn't do turkey drives, and now we were a combined organization. So we had to purchase a lot of the turkeys to people that wanted them across the state. We received some amazing corporate turkey contributions as well as monies. And we purchased an awful lot. And remember, at that point in time, because of the supply chain situations, it was very, very difficult to get our hands on turkeys, and they were very expensive. So we spent a lot of money on those, but we were proud to report that when all was said and done on Thanksgiving Day in 2021, we had given out over 50,000 turkeys to the people of Connecticut, on top of all the other work that we do. And then they had side dishes and everything else. So everyone that wanted a warm meal for Thanksgiving Day, that had asked for one,